The Western world has been completely taken over by a storm, from the rainbow flag being flown in the White House to almost every major institution and multi-billion-dollar company changing their logos, to trans women dominating women's sports, being allowed to enter female bathrooms and prisons. But how the hell did we get here? Why did everyone just suddenly go along with what seems to be obviously unacceptable? It was a shadow that grew under our noses for decades and now has finally exploded into becoming the new orthodoxy that many blindly adopted. This is the dark history of the LGBTQ movement, critical gender theory, and how it came to be. All starts at the source with a famous and highly influential Enlightenment figure named Immanuel Kant. A German philosopher born in 1721 synthesized early modern rationalism and empiricism. Now, I won't do a full breakdown of Kant, but here's where you need to pay attention and how it ties to the current day LGBTQ+ movement. The Enlightenment modernist idea is essentially by using reason and observing the world around us, we can comprehend what is and isn't true. Kant, as a direct response, questioned this, believing humans are limited physically and mentally imperfect, giving birth to a new era of what we now call postmodernism, moving the focus from objectivity to subjectivity, hyper-skepticism of grand narratives, and eventually everything. That reality as we know it doesn't exist, independent from the mind, but is created by it. Everything around us gets constructed into space and into time. Your subconscious is actively creating reality as you live your life, which eventually evolves into my truth, his truth, their truth. There is no the truth. A new emergence of writers, theorists, and intellectuals ensued in the 1800s and well into the 1900s. His universal subjectivity is later modified by new philosophers deemed the fathers of postmodernism, including Jean-François Lyotard, Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, and Jean Baudrillard. These guys will question Kant and abolish this universal element, unleashing the notion of everyone's personal subjective view of the world has equal weight and value. They reject fully in their own versions the concepts of rationality, objectivity, and universal truth. Fundamentally, removes the idea of biology, evolution, free will has any effect on the human behavior, that humans are nothing more but a vessel born into the world, molded by society and socially built. This would unleash the Pandora's box into a new world that we see today. Are you following so far? Alright. At the same time, in France, a bisexual woman heavily influenced by Karl Marx, Heidegger, Kant, of course, Sartre, named Simone de Beauvoir comes into the light, establishes the early foundation of the second wave of feminism. Simone described herself as a socialist feminist as she seeks to highlight the inherent problems with patriarchy and capitalism, that gender is a defining element of society and is rooted in the struggle for power. In 1949, after the Second World War, she publishes her famous 1,000-page book, Le Deuxième Sexe, or The Second Sex. The important takeaway from it is that she states one is not born, but becomes a woman. The early genesis of the distinction between sex and gender, a social construct. Her work then helped ignite the second wave.
Et même vous qui êtes théoriquement, idéologiquement tout à fait partisan de l'émancipation des femmes et tout ça, eh bien vous ne partagez malgré tout pas ce qu'elles appellent, et que j'appellerai avec elles, le vécu des femmes. Il y a des choses que vous n'arrivez pas à comprendre.
Focusing on equality and discrimination, and fast forwarding into the 1970s, a radical named Shulamit Firestone would publish the book The Dialectic of Sex, which she writes, just as the end goal of the socialist revolution was not only elimination of the economic class privilege, but of the economic class distinction itself. So the end goal of the feminist revolution must not be just the elimination of male privilege, but of the sex distinction itself. Genital differences between human beings would no longer matter culturally. Okay, so there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. You know, it's pretty interesting because as much as I want to empathize with this movement, which I did early on, this socialist, communist, Marxist undertone that presents itself all over the movement highlights exactly the intent behind it. When you think about it, it's really a Trojan horse.
Love, however, found a way. In cities across the country, gay people created their own families of friends and lovers, their own society.
The trans movement really structured itself in the 1980s with Judith Butler leading with Gail Rubin, Sandy Stone, and Susan Stryker. These founding figures of the discipline of queer theory and transgender studies were hailed as heroes. They explained gender is a social construct and that man and women is nothing more than a false binary that was made to uphold a system of heteronormativity in the white male hetero-dominated power structure. Butler, for instance, wrote in her book, Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity, if the immutable character of sex is contested, perhaps the construct called sex is as culturally constructed as gender. Indeed, perhaps it was always already gender, with the consequence that the distinction between sex and gender turns out to be no distinction at all. Trans women are women, biological men are biological women. Who are you to judge? They made the case in order to destroy the oppressive system that we live in. If they made man and women interchangeable, then the fabric of society as we know it could be toppled over and implode. Susan Stryker described the trans body as a technological construction that symbolized a war against Western society. She says, this body is used to fight against the naturalized heterosexual order, traditional family values, and hegemonic oppression of nature. If Beauvoir and Butler can be called the mothers of gender ideology, this man is considered to be its father, although he's a figure that the left rarely mentions anymore because his methods were cruel, creepy, and immoral. Let me explain. John William Money and the Origins of Gender Identity and Gender Reassignment Surgery. A psychologist, sexologist, and professor at Johns Hopkins University, John Money was famous for an experiment that he ran on twins. I can do a full video on this because there's a lot, but I'll try to condense it for you as much as possible so we can stay on topic. Canadian David Reimer and his brother were perfectly healthy boys. However, their mother noticed at 7 months of age they were having trouble peeing. The doctor checked and diagnosed them with phimosis, which was easily fixed with circumcision, but after a huge error during the surgery, they were unable to heal and fix it up. Feeling absolutely hopeless, the parents went to visit Money, a doctor that claimed a man can be a woman. Trusting him fully, he explained, if we transform your son into a woman fast enough, you can live a good life. After an experimental surgery changing the boys you-know-what, they renamed David into Brenda. And since that day, no one in Brenda's environment mentioned that he was born a guy, attempting to nurture him into a full woman. Things, however, didn't work out quite the way they expected. Brenda rejected makeup, didn't want to put a dress, was bullied heavily at school, and no one really accepted him while he was experiencing severe dysphoria. No! 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 Money then published his work early, portrayed it as a success, and the mainstream media championed him for his work. At 15 years old, David discovered the truth and immediately took steps to become a guy again. The effects of the trauma lasted well into the future. This easily goes down as one of the most horrific medical experiments the world has ever seen.
And when you get grown up, the body shape. But sometimes it doesn't always agree. We just hope it does most of the time.
And it all comes back to today, what we're seeing manifest in real time.
Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys. It was a general.
Right beforehand, you fucking said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Motherfucker, take it outside.
Canada, France, United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, United States, and many more. All copy-paste scenarios unfolding in different magnitudes. Hate speech laws are being put forward. We have world leaders who can't even tell us what a woman is with specifics. We don't know how many genders there are. Technically, with this philosophy, the number is infinite. Public taxpayer-funded schools that is pushing this on kids. Clinicians performing gender-affirming therapy and surgeries on the youth. And we often hear the phrase, why do you care? Why can't you just let LGBTQ people live? First of all, none of the people in this movement are libertarians. They hate freedom and seek to control your every move. Second, our entire establishment leading the nation, school system, in some countries it's nationalized healthcare, that have fully embraced these ideas. A massive portion of the population that literally outright rejects universal truth and reality as we know it, then they vote. I don't want to live in that world, nor do I want to raise children surrounded by an army of truth-denying totalitarians. That's why it's so important. So the history has a lot more variables and figures related to the topic that we can discuss further, but I provided you guys with a skeleton structure. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace!